Course 2, let's take on lesson 36. We're going to talk about ratio. Ratio is kind of like writing a fraction. 3/4 is a ratio. 3/4 is a ratio because we can read it like this as a fraction 3/4. We can read it 3 to 4. We can read it as a decimal. Or we can read it with a colon. Like when we're talking about odds. So a ratio is a way to describe the relationship between two numbers. Like I could say that the boy-girl ratio is 3 to 4. All right, so what that means is we can do problems that way. If a class had 28 students with 12 boys in it, what is the boy-girl ratio? Well, boy-girl ratio is 12 over, well, we don't know. We don't know how many girls there are, but there's 28 in the class, so 28 minus 12 is 16. So the boy-girl ratio is 12 to 16, which I can reduce to 3/4. Now, if I wanted to know the girl-boy ratio, all I would do is simply write this problem, flip it around. It's 16 to 12, which equals 4 to 3. Okay? Now, if you were, say, you guys were playing cards and you won 4 out of 7. You won 4 out of 7. And you lost the rest. What was your win-loss ratio? Well, you won 4. You played 7. 7 minus 4 is 3, so your win-loss ratio is 4 to 3. Now, if you had a bag full of marbles, and the bag was full of red and green marbles, and the ratio was 4 to 5, 4 red to 5 green, what fraction of the total number of marbles is red? Well, there are 9 total, based on the ratio, so red would be 4 to 9. Now, as you recall, we'll switch gears to probability, because these are tied up together. Probability, we could express probability as a fraction. So probability is number of favorable outcomes, number of outcomes you want to happen. It's like your win-loss ratio over the total number of outcomes, possible outcomes. Okay, this is what you're comparing, what you want to happen compared to what are your possibilities. And we can write all of our possibilities out on a sample space. This is called theoretical probability, but let's try it. Okay, so let's talk about sample space. If you roll a die, what's the sample space? Well, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because that's how many possible outcomes there are. If you flip a coin, there's heads or tails. If you pick a letter from the alphabet, well, then it's going to be all 26 letters. So you can write out all 26 letters, but I'm not going to do that. Okay? Okay, so you could totally do that. Now, you can make your sample space a little more complicated. What if you flip a coin? Whoa, what word am I trying to write? Flip a coin and spin a spinner. Spin a spinner. I just made that one word. That's kind of weird. Here's your spinner. Okay, what are your possible outcomes? Well, first, heads or tails, right? In your spinner, you got 1, 2, 3, 4. Tails, you got 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are all your possible outcomes. What you would do is you write it out in a little graph. H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, and T1, T2, T3, T4. So what's the probability of heads and a number greater than 2? Well, how many possibilities are there? Heads, a number greater then 2. Why did I write 5 there? That's silly of me. Let's erase that. There's no even 5 possibility. Heads greater than 2, well, there's 2 possibilities out of that, out of a total of 8. 2 eighths, which is 1/4. Now let's try one more, because sometimes our sample spaces can be really out there. Here's a spinner, J, K, L, M, N. It lands on J. Here's another spinner. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And here, this is A, this is B. Find all the possible outcomes. Well, here we go. J1, J2, J3, J4, J5, J6, K1, K2, K3, K4, K5, K6, L1, L2, L3, L4, L5, L6, M1, M2, M3, M4, M5, M6, and then N1, N2, N3, N4, N5, N6. Those are all my possibilities. Now what's the probability of spinning an M and a number 3? That's 1 out of a total of 30. Okay? So that leads us there. If there are a number of ways for A to occur and a number of ways for B to occur, okay, so there are certain ways for A to happen, certain ways for B to happen, as M times N. So what that means for us is A has 5 sectors and B has 6 sectors. So our number of outcomes is just by, with the fundamental counting principle, is I can multiply 5 times 6 to know that there's 30 outcomes instead of writing all these out. So that's kind of, that'll at least, at the very least, indicate to me what my sample space is going to be. Try practice on page 260. Why don't you go ahead and do CGHI, CGHI.